We, of course, have been talking politics here in Davos, in particular the U.S. elections, especially in the wake of the Iowa caucuses. We've also been talking crypto here in Davos. And our next guest sits at the intersection, you could say, of those two. That is Anthony Scaramucci, SkyBridge founder and managing partner. Anthony, thanks for being here.
Intersection of volatility and uncertainty. It's quite an intersection. There's no traffic light, unfortunately.
Let's take the political side first, and then we'll move to the crypto side, since we are right near the elections. We've been hearing from people that there's a lot of concern here about a potential Trump presidency, and people are sort of trying to prepare for it. What have you been hearing here on the ground?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, and you were lovely to interview me in 2020. I think we sat in this tent. I said Trump will not win re-election. Generally, the view here in 2020 is that he was overwhelmingly going to win re-election. And I think if you survey people here over the last several days, they believe that he's going to win again. They believe that we're setting up for another Trump presidency, and I think that there's an age issue with President Biden. I mean, one's 81, but looks a little bit more frail than the 78-year-old. But we have a combined 158 or 59 years of people running for president. So I think Joe Biden will beat Donald Trump. And it's not just because of I'm being contrary to the consensus here. I think once we start peeling back the onion again, people are going to realize how destructive he was and how damaging he actually was to the country. And remember, we lost 21 million jobs on his watch. The entire economy imploded during COVID. A lot of people feel he didn't handle that right. He fomented an insurrection, which he's about to face the music for at a trial. He's got 91 indictments, 4 big federal cases, 2 federal cases, 2 state cases. And the most important one, though, I think to our intelligence community are the documents. So you have documents that are misplaced from the White House. They end up in his bathroom. And then they're in the bathroom, and then people in the human intelligence side of the United States are dying all over the world. So I think a lot of people are very, very upset with him. So we'll have to see. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but I think the former president is going to have a really tough time in 24, despite his early successes in these primaries.
Would a second Trump presidency be good for markets?
So I think that the consensus is that it would be, but I don't think it would be. And I want to explain why, because it's very important. We have the best legal system in the world, maybe us in the UK. It's very, very predictable, and it's grounded in 900 years of common law. Mr. Trump has told us that he wants to be a dictator for a day. Mr. Trump has told us that he's going to use the Department of Justice to persecute his adversaries. Mr. Trump has told us that his goal will be to expand the executive power of the United States. And so anybody that's really studied our system knows that the flat, decentralized nature of our system has enabled each of our families to grow in America. And so when you have people that think like that, and they think in a more authoritative way, it could be very, very dangerous. So yes, it could work in the beginning. Yep. People were very happy in Germany in the 1930s, they were very happy in Italy. They ended up a lot less happy. And anytime you get people that think like Mr. Trump, you get a lot of cronyism at the top. And I think it's very, very dangerous. So yes, short term, that's the perception. It would help business. But long term, if he destabilizes the predictability of our legal system, the cost of capital in the United States and globally is going to go up a lot. And people have to look at it long term. They have to think about what made the country great was a flat, decentralized structure where each of us could grow our own families and seek our own aspirations.
Right. And apologies, by the way, for I don't even know what that sound is in the background.
Something duly to snow. Something
right?
would snow.
Yeah.
Something.
Yes. Don't worry. Well, we'll be able to hear you loud and clear. Just wanted to acknowledge the environment that we are in here in Davos, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Speaking of decentralization, that's a good segue to talk about crypto here. I was talking a lot about the spot Bitcoin ETF last week, which is seen as a real milestone. Do you see it that way? Do you think it's going to be the huge money bringer to Bitcoin that a lot of people are seeing?
Over time it will be, and I think you guys addressed this last week, but it's worth noting. You have lots of investors that went into the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust at 2%. They bought it at the Bitcoin at 50,000, 60,000, 69,000. And so when the ETF became available and they were able to sell the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust and take a loss for tax purposes, and you guys know this, they have to wait 30 days before they can reload. But it's a great arbitrage for these people. They can go from a 2% trust into a 21 basis point ETF, and they have to wait, and there's a lot of churn and a lot of volume churn as a result of that. But I think generally the notion that this is an asset class that's here to stay, people like Abigail Johnson at Fidelity and Larry Fink are working on it at BlackRock, I think is great for the industry. Now, what I will say is that we've overly politicized regulation in the country, and I would love to see the SEC move to a more nonpartisan, non-political standard the way the Fed is. And I'm wondering if that could ever happen, because every time we get a new president and we get a right-leaning president or a left-leaning president, we bring somebody in that politicizes the regulation. That's very bad for the industry.
So you think that the SEC's reluctance to really put a stamp of approval on crypto products has been a political stance?
No question. Yeah, this is all born from Elizabeth Warren. She cut a deal with Joe Biden in 2020. She dropped out of the race in exchange for having a lot of say over what happens in the banking industry and the world of financial services. And so she was part of selecting Janet Yellen, and obviously her sidekick in Washington is Gary Gensler. And I call them the regulatory axis of evil, because they're not studying the protocols, they're not studying the technology, they're making these symbolic statements. They're like, oh, this is about fraud, this is about money laundering, where it's not saying that there isn't some money laundering and fraud, but there certainly is. There's more of it with the US dollar, by the way. And I just think the point is, if they calm down and really study the technology, they'd be running towards the technology, not away from it. And frankly, Mr. Gensler knows better. Well, listen to his 24 lectures at MIT. He's actually, at heart, a blockchain enthusiast.
I just want to go back to the election before we let you go, Anthony, because you bridge the world of politics.
Did you like the regulatory access?
This guy's good. Sure, I mean, we wrote it down. It might end up in a story somewhere. But
because, none of your other guests are going to say
this
that.
This is really good. That's why we have you on.
They have like really good PR people. I don't have good PR people. No, I do. I have a great PR.
You're a pretty good PR person.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just saying, none of these people are going to say that. I like firing Gary up. I mean, come on, Gary, you know better, man.
Is Wall Street prepared to support the second Trump presidency?
I think they'll be agnostic about it. The money is not going to flow from Wall Street into the Trump presidency. The money flew into Mitt Romney's coffers. The money flew into Jeb Bush's coffers. I think quietly in salons like the ones that we experience here, they're cool with Trump being president again, quietly. I mean, they don't like the mania and the over-tweeting.
They like low taxes, right?
Well, they've been trying to put some money in Nikki Haley, but that doesn't seem to be a winning bet at this point.
Well, okay. Again, I like Governor Haley a great deal. I think she's a very talented politician. And again, I'm not a politician, and I failed in Washington, so don't go by me. But my observation is, when you have somebody like Trump, you have to build a new market. You have to think like an entrepreneur. The most powerful voting bloc in the country, it's 144 million people, and they vote the exact same way in every election. It's the most powerful voting bloc in the country. It's the non-voter. They don't show up. Okay, and so the politicians have taken advantage of this indifference and this cynicism, and they play the game with tribalism. Nikki Haley could break out of that and go seek a new market. There's 144 million people that have checked out of the system. Barack Obama did that in 2008. Ronald Reagan did that in 1980. You have to think like an entrepreneur and go after a new voting bloc and bring them in. Remember, Barack Obama was faced with Hillary Clinton, President Bill Clinton, 30 Democratic governors in the United States that were supporting her, and all the Democratic infrastructure from the former president. And they lost. Because Mr. then Senator Obama, he went out and created a new market and became the American president. So if Nikki did that, if Governor Haley did that, she'd have a real chance against Donald Trump. Look at those numbers. I mean, he was 51-49. So that tells you that 49% of the people in Iowa, that's a Christian place, supposedly Trump country, he only polled 51%. Right. Create a new market, go after a new group of people. Remember, the largest registrants now are independents. And if Nikki did that, I think she'd trounce Trump.
Well, sounds like a guy still has an ear to Washington. Anthony Scaramucci, you got to leave it there, of SkyBridge. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Party now, right? Yeah, right.
True enough.
I know how to work in Washington, but I knew how to throw a wine party.
Take care, Anthony.